1994's The Lion King is one of the greatest films ever made. That is probably why Congress decided to preserve it in 2016 by putting it in the National Film Registry. Without question, the value of the film as something worthy of preservation is the film's unique hero and villain dynamics. The heroes Simba and Mufasa ride a questionable moral line during many parts of the film, while the villain Scar is an obvious victim of abuse that is faced with unwinnable situations. I am Jim Huss, and this is The Case for Scar. The Lion King centers around Scar's relationships with his brother and nephew. Our first introduction to these characters is Scar's brother Mufasa assembling the entire animal kingdom to show off his son Simba, in a manner that is reminiscent of a Soviet-era military parade. And from then on, we are fed this false narrative that Mufasa is some sort of righteous king. For a righteous and level-headed king, Mufasa has quite the unnecessary temper.
You'll lose more than that when the king gets through with you. He's as mad as a hippo with a hernia.
And more of a temper.
Is that a challenge?
Temper.
He maintains a very sizable harem exclusively to himself, and he can't even step up and be a full-time father to his one son.
Before sunrise, he's your son.
He also subscribes to the theory called the circle of life.
When we die, our bodies become the grass, and the antelope eat the grass. And so, we are all connected in the great circle of life.
Even though he hypocritically forbids entire native species, like the hyenas, from taking part in the very same circle of life.
Hyenas in the Pride Lands!
Now, Scar, on the other hand, is a character that has suffered years of abuse.
Don't turn your back on me, Scar.
He has clearly been tormented by his older brother.
I'm afraid I'm at the shallow end of the gene pool.
Think about it. Scar is a lion, an apex predator. How can an animal at the top of the food chain get such a large scar on his face? The answer is simple. From an even larger apex predator, Mufasa.
Scar.
While an uncle is no substitute for a father, Scar fills the gap of Mufasa's part-time parenting by being a mentor toward Simba by making sure he stays safe.
Promise me you'll never visit that dreadful place.
No problem.
There's a good lad.
But like all characters of questionable moral values, Simba breaks his promise.
Whoa! It's really creepy, yeah. Isn't it great? We could get in big trouble. I know.
This further shows Mufasa's failure as a father. It only takes a little bit of time to teach the value of honesty. Quick side tangent about Mufasa. He is clearly paranoid about his bloodline, and this is evidenced by his harem. Let me explain. A pride of lions usually consists of many females with 1 to 3 males. In Mufasa's pride, the 2 males are Scar and Mufasa. Mufasa has the wonderful burden of mating with all the females, because Scar very clearly indicates that he is unable to mate with females.
Well, forgive me for not leaping for joy. Bad back, you know.
So while Simba may be his only son, Simba is not his only child. This means that when Simba and Nala find out they are predetermined to be married, they are destined to marry their sibling.
Oh, sorry to bust your bubble, but you two turtle doves have no choice. It's a tradition going back generations.
So while I am all for the spreading of American values across the world, I would prefer if it was the values of the 48 states that are not Alabama and Arkansas. But back to the story. Scar, if anything, is an anti-hero. He isn't necessarily a villain, and in many ways is a reluctant hero that is just trying to do the right thing for the greater good.
Surely we lions are not all that bad.
Mufasa, the supposed moral compass, does marginalize the hyenas and creates a 2-tiered society, aka separate but equal, aka Jim Crow style society.
Look at you guys. No wonder we're dangling at the bottom of the food chain.
Man, I hate dangling.
Yeah? You know, if it weren't for those lions, we'd be running the joint.
The hyenas live in a persistent state of near starvation in an elephant graveyard, and Mufasa won't allow them in his kingdom. But Mufasa can enter their territory on a whim and attack them for taking part in the very sacred circle of life that he endorses.
Huh?
Once again, if he was a halfway decent father, this would have never happened.
Dad,
You deliberately disobeyed me.
Scar, on the other hand, wants to help these hyenas. Scar wants to create a world where they will never go hungry.
Stick with me, and you'll never go hungry again!
And after suffering years of violence at the hands of Mufasa, maybe Scar has a justifiable reason to want to get rid of Mufasa.
Fool, we're gonna kill him. And Simba, too.
Great idea! Who
It may be a bit extreme to sacrifice Simba for the sake of the hyenas, but then again, Simba would have been dead had it not been for Mufasa illegally entering the hyenas' territory. Maybe Scar sees Simba as someone on borrowed time.
You could have been killed.
Maybe after years of abuse, Scar's perception of reality is so twisted that he sees the lives of 1 or 2 lions as a fair price to pay for the prosperity of an entire species.
Long live the king.
So Scar is in a weird place, like all great leaders that have to make tough decisions. He isn't right, but he also isn't wrong.
Just for you and your daddy. You know, a sort of father-son thing.
But when Scar executes his plan to liberate the hyenas from their oppression, Scar shows his true character. He shows compassion. He spares his nephew.
Run. Run away and never return.
With Simba and Mufasa out of the picture, Scar then becomes the rightful ruler of Pride Rock. Unfortunately for Scar, his position as general ruler is given no respect, and the lionesses refuse to hunt.
It's the lioness's job to do the hunting.
Yeah, but they won't go hunt.
Don't get me wrong, Scar had to make some tough decisions to become king, but these lionesses do not know any of this. To make things worse for Scar, there is a drought where the plants die off. This unfortunate weather event causes the herds to move away from Pride Rock.
Where is your hunting party? They're not doing their job.
Scar, there is no food. The herds have moved on.
No, you're just not looking hard enough.
It's over. There is nothing left.
Scar has the bad luck of being a king in unfortunate times that are outside of his control. And if things could not get worse, what follows next is what truly humanizes Scar. He is already in an unwinnable position as a king in the time of drought, and his nephew returns to reclaim his place as king and does so under threats of violence.
Give me one good reason why I shouldn't rip you apart.
Oh, Simba, you must understand. The pressures of ruling a kingdom
are no longer yours. Step down, Scar.
I get where Simba is coming from. In an earlier time, he would have had a fully justified claim to the throne of Mufasa's segregated kingdom. But since then, Scar has opened the kingdom to the hyenas.
There is one little problem. You see them? They think I'm king.
For lack of a better term, Simba is trying to reclaim a kingdom that no longer exists. Simba, no different than some sort of racist KKK super Nazi, demands that things go back to how they were.
Either step down or fight.
Oh, must this all end in violence?
Go back to a closed society that doesn't want to grow or expand through diversity. And in a true twist of how nice guys finish last, Simba prevails in combat over his aged and nearly crippled uncle. So in closing, yes, Scar did some horrible things. Yes, he has blood on his hands. Dare I say pause. But so did all the other great leaders that demanded equality, like Lincoln, FDR, Pancho Villa, and Winston Churchill. He isn't perfect. He has his flaws. He has his scars. He is Scar. And for a time, he was the Lion King.
Jim Hoops, ENT.